Hello, my name is Miles Reynolds, and welcome to another edition of Pickleball Builders. Today I have with me a special guest. His name is Brian Sarton, and he's actually a part of our company. He handles residential sales. He didn't know he was actually going to be on here today until this morning, so hopefully we're still going to be friends after this. But yeah, just wanted to welcome Brian to the show, and if you want to just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about you and kind of your background.
Thanks for having me on, Miles. Looking forward to our conversation today and learning some of the mistakes that get made when people are building their own pickleball courts.
Yeah. What do you want to tell a little bit more about where you're from, like how long you've lived in Vegas?
I've lived in Las Vegas for almost 30 years now, so borderline a local. I went to high school Green Valley and been traveling a little bit around the world, but Vegas is my home.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I know you've been with our company. It's been about 3 months.
Yeah.
But what originally kind of got you? I mean, I love pickleball and I love sports, but what originally attracted you to jump on board with us?
Oh well, it's an opportunity to build memories in people's backyards. I mean, it's something that you don't get to do in everyday walk of life, and what more fun can you have than building sports facilities in people's homes?
Yeah. So we've actually had a few different conversations, me and Brian, about this. Is one thing that I've been doing sports construction here in Vegas for about 17 years, and something that I've seen over all that time is basically homeowners taking it on themselves of like, hey, I'm going to be a sports builder overnight, right?
Yeah.
And maybe what those, what we've seen, some of those mistakes, are, and really just focusing on what are the biggest mistakes that we see when people do, kind of take it on themselves to do the court. I mean, we know our courts aren't for everyone. We know our product isn't for everyone. Some people are okay with having a big slab of concrete and a hoop that they get from Walmart and roll back on the court. However, for families that want some of the other options as far as safety, the looks, aesthetics, some things like that, that's where our team usually comes into play.
Right.
What would you say, Brian? Like, from the time that you've been with us, what would you say the first thing that comes to mind as far as the biggest, one of the biggest mistakes you see when homeowners take it upon themselves to do their court?
Definitely one of the biggest things would be, attempting to pour their own concrete. You start to see, especially if they're pouring it themselves versus hiring a contractor, because it really becomes an uneven surface. It's not squared off. It turns into a situation where you're trying to fix other mistakes that have been made before you got there.
Yeah. And that's probably the hardest call for me to hear when somebody first calls in. They're like, hey, we just poured our concrete. We're ready for you guys to come out and do the court. And I'm always like, oh, like that's, and I think the biggest thing that I've seen as well, kind of like you said, as far as not having a licensed contractor, but even taking it a step further from that is, our expertise is sports construction. A lot of people think, concrete is definitely a commodity, right? Anybody can pour concrete, for the most part, right? There's a lot of different concrete companies in Vegas. However, when it comes to sports, there's some real specifics as far as like slope, the finish, the drainage, the bounce. A lot of times even, we've been in the backyard and they're like, oh, I have my landscaper doing it, or I have my pool company doing it, and that's fine. However, well, it's really not fine, because it really depends, right? It depends on how much that detail matters to you.
Correct.
So, if you're pouring a pool deck or you're pouring a patio, you can be off an inch here or off an inch there. It's not a big deal.
Right.
I will say for our customers, for the most part, they're fanatical about those details. Like everything from where, the height of the net, right? It's 2 inches lower in the middle, where the anchors are spaced, and really
how that edging lines up to the end of the concrete.
Correct.
A lot. Every little inch counts.
Correct. And every surface, just like you said, right? How does it line up? I mean, and that's why we like to work it the other way around, not having, oh, hey, the concrete's already poured, come out and do your thing. It's more so we want the concrete to be designed for the surface, right? Like it's got to be, we don't want it to look like an afterthought. Some of our surfaces expand and contract. We don't want it hanging over. We don't want it to be a safety issue. But really, I will say that most of our customers, they're fanatical, right?
Absolutely.
I remember I had one customer and I was out there and he's like, Miles, I think I can get 6 inches more on my court. Come out here. We got to measure this. I mean, I think we had we're sitting down there just like every little inch because we were trying to maximize the space. But that's probably the big thing is with the concrete. It's almost and also every surface requires a different concrete.
Right.
So that's, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, it goes into the difference of whether you're doing post-tension, whether you're doing saw cuts and just a 4-inch slab. It really depends on what type of surface you're looking to do. If you want that acrylic surface for your pickleball, you're adamant that you want to play with the pros play. You're going to want to do post-tension concrete so you don't get the expanding cracks and it's going to stay looking beautiful.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I almost compare it to like the foundation of a house. A court is only as good as the foundation, which is the concrete.
Right.
Once you have a crack in concrete, with acrylic, you can never make it go away. Also, that pickleball is so light. I mean, it's like a wiffle ball. Sometimes people look at it like, that's the ball? It's like, that's the ball my kids use when they use a wiffle bat and a ball in the backyard.
Right.
But even that ball bouncing on a saw cut, sure, you can save some money by doing a saw cut, but even the saw cut can have a different bounce. It can respond differently. Aesthetically, it can look like a checkerboard because now your whole court is cut up every direction. So definitely concrete. We see that a lot.
Yeah.
Whether it's
absolutely.
my landscaper's going to do it or we already poured it. That's, we like to be obviously a part of it from the get-go. I would say one thing that I see a lot of is, another mistake that I see with that homeowners make is not being educated on all the surfaces that are available.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we always say there's no perfect surface.
Yeah.
That's every surface has its pros and cons. I mean, do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more? Like, what do we normally, kind of what we base the surface on and things like that?
Well, it really comes down to, what type of games the customer is looking to play. There's surfaces that play better for hockey. There's surfaces that we have, they're designed for pickleball, which is exploding. So it's really important to get their vision down and know exactly what it is that they're looking for so that we can steer them in the right direction. Also budget factors into what they're looking for, whether they have children playing on the court. There's a lot of different things that we're looking to talk about. Whether that court's going to last them the lifetime that they're looking for.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, as far as like the actual surface, you're right. I mean, we like to start with who's playing on the court, right? Is it kids? Is it adults? What is the main game, right? Because a lot of times, people will want, a lot of times will want to do multiple games on the court. However, whatever that main game is usually the driving force of what surface we would select. So a lot of people obviously know us for our modular surface. However, we have, multiple different surfaces that you can use and play on, depending upon what you want to do on it. A lot of people are like, hey, I want to play on acrylic paint because that's what the pros play on. And I'm always like, well, that's painted concrete, right?
Yeah.
And you're not 20, I don't know if for me, well, maybe they are, some of our customers, right? But for me, I always have my knees always swollen because I play on a lot of acrylic, so it's just kind of that whole thing of, if you're playing tournament at a tournament level, there's a lot of people that want acrylic. However, but also for me, actually at my own backyard, I'm doing our pickleball modular surface because it is easier on the knees and ankles. I've had like 3 appointments with my knee doctor because I can't get the swelling to go down because my knees are absorbing every time I cut or turn on acrylic paint.
Yeah, my wife laughs at me every morning when I get out of bed because my ankles are cracking. So, for me, playing on acrylic doesn't work very well. It's something that causes me pain at the end of the day for sure.
Yeah. We actually have one of our customers, John, right? Anyway, he lives in the Ridges. But it's interesting because he has one court at his office that's acrylic. He has at his office has an acrylic court, and then at his home he has our pickleball modular surface.
Right.
And he's like the best person to ask him, like, hey, what surface do you like better? And he's like, you kidding me? He's like, I love the modular because, he's like, when we come over every Sunday, I have all my friends and and family come over and we play pickleball, right? The whole time,
Yeah.
the whole day. And he's like, we can play the whole day without my knees being sore, my ankles being sore, like, and really feeling it those next few days. He's like, we can play all day and we still feel, if it still feels good on our body. We play 2-3 times longer. And so that's kind of the big draw to the modular. And I mean, we've seen courts. I mean, I know you've been around a few courts already that have been here. I don't know. What have you seen as far as like time frame or?
Just this morning, we were speaking with a client that had their court in their yard for over 20 years. So, it's fairly common to see the lifespan of the modular surface extending out 15, 20 plus years, still holding their structure and still looking beautiful, and people still playing on them, and generations of kids playing on them. So, grandkids. So it's definitely something that has a longer lifespan than the acrylic, because you're generally looking at 5 to 8 years for the resurface on the acrylic. So, if you want to play on acrylic, yeah, you can do that, but the modular is going to give you the biggest lifetime.
Yeah, no, it's correct. I mean, the gal that we had met with this morning, she said that exactly. She's like, it's been here in the Vegas heat for 20 years. She's actually looking to do her second court with us, but she's like, it's been here for 20 years. It's still the original surface. It's still blue. It's still green.
Yep.
I mean, obviously it's faded a little bit,
Yep.
but there hasn't been a need to resurface it in all that time.
Yeah.
So yes, you do invest more with the modular surface compared to acrylic. However, just like you said, with the acrylic surface, the industry standard is every 5 to 8 years that you have to resurface it.
Right.
Because that silica sand will wear out with the traction. Or just
the appearance.
Yeah, the appearance. It'll lose its color
Yeah.
a lot quicker. So yeah, that's kind of and then also, what are you going to be doing on it? Like, I've been to some of my friends' wedding receptions here in Vegas where I've been on a sport court. We have chairs and tables and DJs or whatever out there on the
Right.
court. So it's definitely, I would say that's the biggest thing, is also, what are the ages that are playing on the court? Are you a little bit,
Gives you a little more functionality.
yeah, you're a little bit older where you want it to feel better on the body, or for example, for me, my kids, right? My kids range from 5 to 19. Well, they're rollerblading, skateboarding, riding bikes. So the other big draw to the modular surface is that it's easier on not just necessarily easier on the body, but it's also the safest surface on the market.
Right.
There's head impact. I saw my little girl fall out of our trampoline onto our court. I mean, she landed like kind of on her shoulder, but she was okay.
Yeah.
Whereas concrete with acrylic paint has zero tolerance.
Or in the case of some of the pickleball players we run into, diving across the surface.
Yeah, we don't recommend diving. Yes, I do remember that.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, so it's that safety factor is a huge thing. It's not just the playability, but the safety factor. And, full transparency, I joked with my wife, but I used to live in like the southwest area of Vegas, and I had a half-court basketball, and I told my wife, I'm like, honey, is it worth moving to the northwest so I can put a regulation pickleball court, because I'm obsessed. Like, I've
Right.
caught the bug. And we laughed about it, but now we live in the northwest, so I won that battle. But anyway,
It's a tough sale, but
Yes.
it worked out.
Yes, but now we live in the northwest, and I have a regulation pickleball court at my house. Now we have the other games too that you can play on it. But I was on the fence, because we've had our modular, a lot of people, and just full transparency in the market, when people think of the modular surface, right, the tile surface, and you say the word pickleball, they're like, oh, you can't play. You can't
Right.
play on that. It's
Yeah.
not going to play right. Well, if you back up about 2 years ago, there wasn't a modular tile surface on the market that actually was designed for that pickleball. So if you play on pretty much any modular court in Las Vegas or around the world, it's not going to bounce right, because that pickleball is so light.
Yeah.
So what's awesome about Sport Court is they said, hey, look, pickleball's exploding. We're going to make a modular surface that's specifically engineered for that pickleball, that it has the right bounce, that it has the right, it's actually within like 1 millimeter of acrylic. Very similar response, really mimicking the same play that you find on an acrylic court. Mm-hmm. And really it's no different than tennis, right? Tennis, you have acrylic hard courts, but you also have grass, you have clay. I think the pickleball world has been a little bit more, it's a newer sport. And now that we have it out there, it's kind of cool to say, but Sport Court actually just, we received the endorsement from the PPA,
Right.
the Professional Pickleball Association, as the official portable surface of the PPA. In fact, we were out there, me and you were out there at the Darling Tennis Center, right?
Yeah, and it was really cool to see the reactions from people that had never really been exposed to the modular surface, and for them to actually get out there on the court and play. You know, the positive reactions were pretty cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, and really going back to I start talking pickleball and I go three different ways. But that was a conversation I had with my wife. I'm like, honey, I'm not going to put it down for my court. I'm way into pickleball. I want it to play right. I want it, and I'm doing acrylic. I'm doing hard court acrylic. And then as I started to get on it and play on our new pickleball modular surface, like it's been exploding. Yeah. I mean, it's been out a couple of years, but I mean, it's like gangbusters around the country because people want something safe for their kids. As you get older, you want to have that shock attenuation, it feel better. You don't want to have to resurface it. You don't have to, I mean, it's funny, we always joke around when you go to a tennis court, right? They always have the sign that says no rollerblading. When you see an acrylic court, no rollerblading, no skateboarding, no riding bikes, and no black sole shoes.
Right.
And we always say that you should just say no kids allowed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's like, really, I mean, sure.
Cut the fun out.
Yeah, it's finicky if you can't be doing that same versatility on the court.
If you got to worry about damaging it while you're playing, are you really even playing?
Yes. And don't get me wrong, I will say 100%. There are people and people listening to this where they are set on acrylic.
Yeah.
And obviously to throw it out there, we do that surface as well. Some people are just set on, look, I don't, whatever, Ben Johns is playing on, he's like the best pickleball player in the world. Anyway. But some people are like, look, whatever he's playing on, I want to play on, right?
Yeah.
And we get that, right? I mean, our customers are fanatical. So people that want acrylic, 100% we do acrylic. But I think that leads into the next mistake. For those that do acrylic, have you ever seen anybody that's done it themselves with the paint?
Not yet, but I've heard a couple stories.
Yeah. What do you know about it?
Becomes very costly to get it up if they mess it up and they don't use the proper installation techniques and not using the squeegees and not putting the multiple layers and the adhesion promoters, and it becomes tough to get off that concrete surface once it's down.
Yes, and that's the thing. We have some families where they're like, look, I did my own concrete, I have my own hoop, but then we go out there and then they took it a step further and they're like, I also did my own acrylic paint, and we're like, oh no.
Yeah.
So basically what it is they went down to Home Depot. They went on the shelf and they're like, oh, look,
some concrete paint.
It's court paint,
Yeah.
and it's do-it-yourself court paint. So let's just take a little roller and take a brush, and we're just going to roll on one coat of this awesome acrylic court paint. And they're like, wow, I just saved all this money. And then, like you said, right, what you've heard or already is, and as we've went out there, then you start seeing the paint peel up. So even the acrylic paint is a very specialized surface. Actually, you can't even purchase it in the state of Nevada. Like, it's a specialty paint that even comes from out of state. And really that process is when you have a brand new slab of concrete, you've got to like acid etch it, you've got to put down, and it's all done by squeegee. You've got to use like an adhesion promoter, which is basically like a glue, and then you have multiple coats of like an acrylic black color that's squeegeed on, and then you have a couple colors of color coats that has like silica sand in it,
Right.
which actually gives it traction. So if you're not doing, and it seems like a small thing, but if you think about it, right, a pickleball court, roughly 30 by 60, 1,800 square feet, if you're doing 4 coats of that, I mean, now you're what? You start getting into like 6,000, 8,000 square feet of surfacing.
Right.
However, if you're not doing every one of those steps, when it peels, that's when people call us. Hey, Miles, we wanted to save some money, or hey, Brian, we wanted to save some money. We did it on our own. Now it's peeling. Now what? And then we're like, okay. Now we have to strip the entire court of all the paint because we can't put anything over it, because now it's only going to, even if we do the proper process, it's going to peel off with your existing paint. So yeah, that is a huge, basically I said take the proposal and times it by 2.
Yeah,
now we got to strip the
that's
whole
a
thing.
nightmare.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And anyway, so yes. Any other things that you've seen, Brian, like as far as like other mistakes that homeowners make?
I really think those are the 2 biggest that I've seen, is the surface
The concrete
and
and
the
the
concrete. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to bounce it off of you if you seen others. I'm really fanatical about pickleball. I probably make it sound like I'm better than I am because I always talk about it, but I'm learning. I'm still like getting better. However, the biggest thing that I've seen, because I even have friends or people, customers that didn't go with us that did their own court, and I'll go over to their court and play because I love to play wherever I can, and they'll be like, "Hey Miles, I love you, but hey, we wanted to save some money, so we did our own court." And then they'll flip on the light, and I'm like, "Oh man," I'm like, "It's lit on this side of the court, but you forgot to light the other side." So I would say a huge thing that I see is just not proper lighting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that definitely plays a big impact if you can't use the court well at nighttime, or you're arguing about whether the ball's in or out.
Yes. That's
You know?
a very awkward interaction when you're playing with your friends and you go to hit the ball, and it's like the light's over here on your right, and then it may be in or maybe out on the left, and then you have that look at each other like, and they're like, "Oh, that was out," and you're like,
Do over.
You're like, do I want to stay friends or do I want to call this out? So, yeah, so I think lighting is a huge thing. So for us, I know a big thing that we do is every court is different, right?
Yep.
The layout, the size, it's custom. Like, so what we do, I would like to sound like I do this all by myself, but we send it to our photometrics team, which is basically a team of our lighting team that takes the size of the court, where the anchors are going to be, and they look at the candles, like where it illuminates on the court. And, you know, a lot of concern in Vegas where, like, you know, smaller yards, you don't want to light up your neighbor's yard, is it's almost designed, it's designed for the court, right? It's going to light it properly without throwing light to your neighbor, without throwing light, you know, into your house, but basically illuminating the court to where you don't have those shadows all over the court. So it all comes down to height, you know, what LED fixtures used, all those things. I mean, we actually have, it's very, you know, down to the, I mean, literally on my own court, I was like, I've been doing it 17 years and I still had to reach out to them. I'm like, where do you want me to put these? What height do I need to be?
Yeah.
How many do I need?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's awesome. And in fact, we were using it just last night after all the kids got done trick-or-treating. They all came over to my house and we cranked some music around my court and they were jamming, playing just about every game you can imagine. So
That's
the
pretty cool.
lighting is huge. I know with a lot of the moms that we meet with, or even just sometimes, you know, the wives that we meet with, one thing that's big for them is what the court looks like, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's a huge mistake that I think we see is, you know, when you're doing it yourself, I'm calling my own concrete guy, calling my own fencing guy, or I'm just doing it myself. I found some netting online, I'm putting it together, right?
Right.
And it's interesting because I have those same conversations where people are like, yeah, I saved all this money, look at my court. And I'm like, you saved money.
It looks like it too.
And for me, within the first like 15, 20 seconds, I can usually find 5, 6, 7, 8 different things where, okay, the anchor should have been shifted here. The lighting should have, you know, the angle of the light should have been here. You know, the orientation of the court, right? Now you're looking
Hoop
into the
placement.
sun. Hoop placement.
Yeah.
Is it too close to the pool? Is it far enough away from the pool? Is it close to the house? Like, what else do you have going on in the court? I mean, our whole goal is how do we just make the coolest, funnest, I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to use it. But how can we just make the coolest space when you're hanging out with friends? Because we know of all the years sport court's been around, 1974, the biggest thing that we hear from our families and clients is our house is the hangout house.
Right.
So making sure it's designed for playability, aesthetics, and really, a lot of times when you do it yourself, it drives my wife crazy because we'll be driving through neighborhoods and I'm like, honey, look at that. There's a sport court. Look at it's 20 years old. Look how good it looks, right? She'll be like, I don't care. And then I'll look at another one. I'm like, honey, look, they did it themselves. See how the netting is like drooping and see how the poles are like,
Right.
That kind of thing. So that's where, for us, for people that care about the aesthetics, our goal is that it looks seamless, that it looks beautiful. It doesn't look like an afterthought.
Be a showpiece in the backyard.
Correct. Yeah. I know that most of our dads, it's funny because we'll say all the time, we'll say, hey, why did you build a court? And they'll be like, are you kidding me? This has been my dream since I was like 6, Miles. I mean, we had one of our customers, just like last month, we showed up to do our kickoff meeting, right? And he's out there and he's just like fist pumping. And I'm like, you excited, Ken? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm very,
yeah.
very
He's
excited.
ready to
like,
roll.
I mean, and they always say it's for the kids, but then they're always the ones that are like, when's my court coming? And I don't think it's coming,
Yeah.
It's definitely these dads that have had these dreams since they were a kid to have like a cool backyard court.
Well, yeah, especially if you grew up shooting on one of the rollout hoops in a slanted driveway. That's now you're having a professional court built in your backyard. It's
Yeah.
an amazing time.
Yes, with logos, lighting,
Yeah.
pretty much whatever options you'd like. Surface, logos, lighting, all the different things, surface that comes into it. One other thing that I wanted to throw out there too, as far as like, is also just the project managing of it, right? There's sometimes where we have families where we'll come to them and they're like, man, I'll never do that again. We just did my kitchen and we did it on our own.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there corralling contractors and figuring out where they are. And so I think also what I would say is time. Time is a
Yeah.
big thing, right?
Yep. Having everything lined up for them and just one-stop shop.
Yes. My wife always asks me to do stuff around the house, and even though I'm a contractor, I'm always like, honey, I don't know how to do that. Maybe I could figure it out if I like YouTubed it.
Certain things you just that crosses that comfort
Yes.
level.
Yes, but I'll always say, honey, I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the same thing. In fact, I had a friend of mine that was putting in his own hardwood floor, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to save some money. I'm going to put in my own hardwood floor. And I talked to him about 2 months later. He's like, yeah, I shorted it like 2 times. I had to tear it out on this section, redo it. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how about you just stick to what you do that you know well, right? And I think that's the biggest thing for us.
Yeah, and then you end up spending more money than what it costs just to hire a pro anyway.
Yes, for sure. And we, like I said, we talked about it. We know our courts aren't for everyone, but people that care about the aesthetics, care about how it plays. I think the other thing is that a lot of our customers that we've seen over the years, you know, for ones that have done it on their own, you know, done it themselves, is everything looks really pretty when it first goes in, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's feeling really good. Hey, I saved all this money. I put it in myself. We've seen the high winds in Vegas where they call us right after the big high wind, and they're like, their court's like in the pool,
Yeah.
or their surface is in the pool,
It's rolled up.
or, you know, hey, like the surface. I had one court where the kid let fireworks off on the court and he burned part of the court, or something, the court shifted, or maybe, you know, netting came down, or whatever it is. And I think that's the thing for us is, sure, it looks pretty when it first goes in, but who's around after to take care of it?
Right.
So I know you want to tell them a little bit really quick about what we do as far as like with the maintenance?
Well, as with anything, maintenance is very important. You know, what we do is we'll have our crews go out, and we're making sure that the hoop is in good structure sound, and have everything lubricated, and pulling up the court in segments, and making sure that that we pressure wash the concrete, getting the debris out from underneath. Over time, dirt, leaves, debris will build up underneath the surface, so it's very important to get that out so you get that true bounce.
Yeah.
Maintaining the fun, so not that you're out there dribbling the ball and it goes sideways on you. So it's very important that we get that court clean, make sure it stays looking beautiful throughout the life.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, we talk about it, right? We take a lot of pride in our having courts here in Vegas that have been here since the 80s. Now, even though it'll last forever, structurally, everything outside in the high wind, the heat, the heat, the debris, things that get blown around, just like anything, requires maintenance to keep it looking good. So we always say we want to have a relationship with you, not just for the installation side of it or the beginning of it. We want to have a relationship with you for the life of the court.
Yep.
Which usually means forever when it's our when it's our court. So,
Yep.
But yeah, is there? Let's see. I wanted to see as far as like overall. I'll just throw this out there. What's been the most like kind of the coolest thing since you've been with Sport Court? Like, I know sometimes you'll say, hey, I talk to my wife when I go home about different things. Like, what have you enjoyed about seeing the overall finished product? Or
I mean, it's for one, just you meet really cool families, and everybody's so happy to see you, and you're taking something that they've either discussed for a long time and envisioned, and they have something they want to accomplish with their backyard to giving their kids a safe place to play, or maybe they're super competitive pickleball players, and instead of waiting out at the park, they want to have all their buddies come over to their house and they can just continuously play. The fact that you're building something really cool that's giving people a lifetime of memories. You can't beat that.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I love sports. I love the design. I love the sports part of it. I don't love the construction side of it. That's why we have a team that loves that part of it. However, I can't imagine building anything else, right? I mean,
For sure.
For me, it's like, I still think even after 17 years, it's still the coolest thing that you can put in your backyard. My last house had only a court and no pool. The house I just moved to had only a pool and no court. And I will tell you, with having 5 kids between 5 and 19, we use the court far more than we've ever used a pool.
Right.
Because the court is, even when it was 100 degrees, my kids are out there barefoot, like playing soccer back and forth. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. But, or my son, he's older, he's a teenager, and he's like, Dad's not cool anymore, but he says, hey, I bet I can beat you one-on-one.
Right.
And I'm like, I bet you can't. Luckily, I can still shoot a little bit, just enough to beat him. But yes, that's kind of the big draw to it. It's just, it's having something, especially now, that you can make memories. I mean, we live in such a busy, crazy, fast-paced world. Every time I come home from the end of the day, my kids always be like, Dad, come out to the court with me. Sometimes I just pull up a lawn chair and watch them just cruise around. But then there's other times where we get out and shoot hoops or hit the pickleball. So yeah, I really appreciate you being, joining me today. And, thank you, everyone out there, for joining us as well. It's always, I always love, our office always jokes, if we're talking about pickleball, then I'm always running behind for the next appointment, because that's like my trigger word. But anyway, I love being able to be here with all of you. And please remember to like, share, and comment. And look forward to seeing everyone on our next edition.